Okay, good evening, good evening, good evening, good evening, good evening. Lots happened in sport the last few days. So I'm just going to get the chat sorted, and then we will discuss what has happened the last few days. Well, two big stories have happened, and I have covered both quite extensively on the channel. Now, one of the first big stories is Ben Stokes being found not guilty of a fray on Monday, I believe. No, Tuesday. And on Monday evening, the England Test side said he wouldn't be in the squad for the third Test. On Tuesday evening, he's in the squad for the third Test, but may not play. The way the ECB have handled the whole affair, and the way the CPS and the police, the whole shebang has been badly handled and shows many flaws with the current legal system as it stands. He has divided opinion since he broke into the Test side. Some of his off-field antics and some of his on-field antics have got a colourful career, Ben Stokes. And then you have to look at Danny Cipriani, the parallel chaotic player. Again, very colourful off the field, exceptionally colourful off the field, actually. He's probably better known for his off-field antics as Danny Cipriani than his on-field antics. And of course, he's recently been done for assault. He pled guilty and has now due to pay a fine. It's going to be interesting whether these two particular individuals play for their respective Test sides ever again. I wouldn't be surprised with Ben Stokes if he does. The ECB has shown it's a gutless organisation and has shown itself to be incompetent. Danny Cipriani, on the other hand, he's had a far worse history with alcohol-related incidents. Not on the field. So these two sportsmen are dominating the sports headlines this week. And there are other things. It's been really fun. The football season started and the rugby union season's around the finals a few days away. And there's always interesting, exciting sporting stories happening. And these two sportsmen are dominating both the front and back pages in the newspapers, and they're covering lots of article space on websites and social media. Now, it is interesting. There are other players also getting injured in various sports. So Kevin De Bruyne, knee injury, could be out for up to 3 months. This could be interesting to see how it affects Manchester City, not just only in the Premier League, but also the League Cup and the Champions League, because the FA Cup for them doesn't start till December, January time, so he should be back by then. But he could. Man City have an injury conundrum because he's a key player for them. Yes, they won very, very well the title, the Cup title as well, very easily. They won 2 titles at a canter, but they fell apart in the FA Cup against Liverpool. Well, no, against Wigan, sorry. And they fell apart in the Champions League against Liverpool. So Man City, if you think about it, do have flaws in their side. And without Kevin De Bruyne in that midfield, that exposes them a little bit more and exposes some of their depth. And if their depth players and their squad players can fill in, fine. And they have a great squad. But this will be testing for them. But it's not getting the coverage it should because of Ben Stokes and Danny Cipriani. Now, I've done a video on Cipriani today. And you've got to look at his history of his drink-related incidents. I think the funny one is the bus incident, which isn't funny because the injuries he sustained from that were quite serious. But he couldn't behave himself on a night out with his Sale teammates at the time. And then you have the bar incident in Melbourne, where he jumps across the bar and tries to steal several bottles of vodka and got a citation from the local police force in Australia. And then you have the drink driving incident, which I think is the most serious. And he doesn't seem to learn from his previous mistakes and previous misdeeds and the issues he's had. Now, clearly there's an alcohol issue with Danny Cipriani or an alcohol abuse issue there. And the other behaviours that go with them. Ben Stokes also has had reprimands and internal suspensions by the ECB, some of his issues. And these two players don't seem to learn from their previous. The sports they play in are seen as elitist and more upper middle and upper class, so the working classes are not seen to participate as much as they should, when actually there's a large portion of working class participation, be it fans or players in these sports. It's just seen that way because of the way the media portrays it. Yes, Dane Cipriani went to fee-paying private school. Yes, he was very well educated, had a very good education. Yes, he's from he's from a middle class background. I won't say wealthy, but he's from a reasonable background, of reasonable means. And I say this: if these two players were football players and did that, the media and fans and sports pundits would want the book thrown at them by the courts, by the court system, be it in this country or abroad. They would demand action because they play for sports that are seen as more gentlemanly and seen as more respectful. They're not getting the same pressure, although there are some articles saying that the book should have been thrown away. It's a difficult one because we're not in that court. We're not in that courtroom. We're not the jury. We're not the magistrate. We're not the lawyers. We're not looking at the finer points. We just see what is the media is allowing us to see. But there are serious issues within cricket and rugby union, and I would say rugby league as well, of a drink culture and a substance abuse culture. It's not a new thing. There have been allegations against multiple players going back decades concerning alcohol and narcotics, not prescription drugs, but narcotics, so cannabis, cocaine, speed. There have been a litany of players accused or rumoured to have been involved in taking drugs and excessive amounts of alcohol and having an issue. Same with football as well. There are some very famous cases of players who have alcohol and substance abuse issues. Paul Merson and Paul Gascoigne, for example, prime examples of players with issues with alcohol. There is seen to be a culture of the parties on tour culture with some of these clubs and sports. It's a difficult one to put a finger on. It's a difficult one to understand why, but there seems to be an issue there. I wouldn't be surprised though he's in play. I don't think he deserves to play, even though he's been found innocent. I think there's still questions he needs to answer. On my part at least, that this is not first instance where he's messed up. And I think the ECB and the England setup needs to look at curfews. I do think the sport of cricket needs to come up with a universal code of players and all players basically to follow. Same with rugby union. I think both sports have a culture issue that's deep rooted and is serious and is not going away. And that's worrying. In this day and age of social media, you can't get away with sneezing in public without someone tweeting about it. Ironically, there is no footage of Danny Cipriani and what he did. But you look at the Tompkins brothers in rugby league at Wigan. One got fired by Wigan, the other one was leaving Wigan anyway. Both were fined by the club, and one was suspended by the club for their drinking antics in a local pub in Wigan, which brought the club and the game into disrepute. And so it's at the moment that there are issues in multiple sports to do with alcohol. And it'll be interesting to see what questions I get asked on Cipriani and Ben Stokes and how that brought British football sport back into the gutter from when it shouldn't be, because there's some great stories going on. There's some great things happening in the European Championships, breaking the British sprint record and being one of the best women's sprinters of all time for her 100-meter sprint. We're seeing Adam Peaty continue to win medals. So these great stories are being overshadowed by these two Muppets misbehaving. I will call them Muppets. I'm not holding any bars here. I'm not going to be neutral on the fence. I think both of them are abhorrent individuals. Outside of they may be exception talented at what they do, they're abhorrent individuals. And very checkered off-field antics. And they've had to apologise multiple times for their off-field. Cipriani is I think worse than Ben Stokes. And Ben Stokes is I think Cipriani there's a bigger issue here with his moral compass. I redo. I think Stokes is an idiot, but Arnie is a bit more than an idiot. I honestly think his moral compass, a string of high-profile girlfriends, and each and every one of them he's been unfaithful to. Only does he have the drink, which is clearly well documented. There is no denying that he's probably an alcoholic. But his loyalty comes into question, and the way he respects people, especially women, and his and respect for women and minorities, pushing for more equality. The way he treats people is pretty crap. It's not good, and that's going to be coming to question his moral, because he doesn't seem to learn from his previous mistakes. If anything, he makes them 10 times worse. He's been hit by the bus incident where he gets hit by the bus. There's the jumping up the bar in Melbourne and stealing bottles of. There's the drink drive conviction. Been guilty for assaulting a police officer and a member of another on a pre-season. This ain't good. This, I think, rugby union, in fact, any sport doesn't want. He is a star player. He's a very talented individual with what he can do with the ball, the boot, and how he brings other players into playing and position based. These antics really don't the cause of the sport he plays, or himself, or his club that he represents. And then you've got to look at other sporting stories right now that are being overshadowed by this guy. La Liga have agreed a deal with a US media group to play one regular season game in the US, and that's a very slippery slope from going from a world-class sport to milking it for cash cow. Real Madrid do not get money; they are wealthy clubs, and I wouldn't be surprised if the Premier League tries to follow suit. This comes a few. A report was released saying that half the Premier League clubs in 2016, 2017 could have let us in for free, and the other half could set ticket prices a tenner and still made a profit. That is what is so disgusting about the move with the Liga signing this agreement to sell the game abroad. Now, you can see it's Real Madrid or Atletico Madrid. There is nothing I can do. The internet is as good as it's going to get. That's the issue. The internet is as good as it's going to get. We can try and move. Let's see if that works. But I don't think the internet connection is going to get any better, to be honest, mate. Can't really help it. But if you've just joined, we've discussed the Ben Stokes incident. We've discussed the Dan Cipriani incident. And we're now discussing the decision by La Liga to play regular season games in the US. We don't know exactly what season this is going to be starting in, but it's a 15-year deal. It's provisional. It's to do with some other rights that were sold in the US sports market. And it could have far-reaching consequences for the sport and for various leagues in general. And I don't think it's a good move. I think it's a cash cow. It doesn't help the development of the MLS. It probably will annoy a lot of fans over here in Europe when their clubs are playing games in North America. What's the point of pre-season tours to China and India and the US if you're gonna be playing regular season games there, which could have an outcome. The jet lag may have an outcome on a game when that it. But that is what it is. The La Liga deal is not set in stone, but there are plans. There is an agreement to plan in place for regular season games in the US, which I think is wrong. But football's turned into big business, and the fan is ignored. Our concerns are ignored. My opinion on Wayne Rooney. Wayne Rooney, I remember when he burst through at Everton when he was a 16-year-old. And I think he is a bit overrated, but at the same time, I think he's still got a lot to give to DC United. I think him going there will help develop some of the young players. There has been an upsurge in form of DC United since he joined. They are one of the struggling clubs in the MLS. I do think the issue with the MLS is a lot of the overseas players that go there are past their best when they do. And this is a concern that I have with the agreement with La Liga going to play regular season games. The difference between the NFL and Major League Baseball and the NBA is they're franchise, they're not club based. So if they are struggling in a city, they'll just move it. The issue with what I find different is our sporting cultures are different. In North America, you have a rich businessman who buys a share in a league and gets a franchise team out of it. At any point, as long as the other members of that league, the other franchises agree to a move, a team can move. If you look at the NHL in the 70s and the 80s, several teams moved multiple times. Kansas City, I think, became the Colorado Rockies, which became the New Jersey Devils in the end. I think you'll find the Golden Seals moved around, and then you had the Quebec Nordiques became the Colorado Avalanche. So if you look at American-based sports and the franchise system, there isn't really a link to the city as such. They move around a lot. They go out of business a lot more. If an owner doesn't like something, he pulls the plug and walks away, and there's no one to come in. Teams get relocated a lot. Look at the Oakland Raiders; they've been relocated multiple times, and they're finally leaving California to go to Vegas. And Oakland Raiders fans are rightly pissed. And the NFL is a cash cow. That's all it is. It's not there to develop the game in Europe because NFL Europe failed. It is there to milk the European fan base of their hard-earned cash 4 times a year. It is a cash cow to the NFL. They're just in it for the money. They're not really in it to develop the game over here because there is no American Football League over here really anymore. NFL Europe failed. The level of American football that is played in the UK is really wouldn't even make it to high school level. The quality level is shocking. People play it, but that's fair enough. People support the NFL, and that is fair enough. And I don't mind watching the Green Bay Packers do well. And but it is a cash cow. It is literally just there designed to make money, and it's going to be the same with taking Premier League or La Liga or Bundesliga games to the US. Because if you look at the preseason tour matches that all these top level clubs played in the US, they were playing to half empty stadiums at most. Low crowds, low attendance, lack of interest, and that's preseason. And that is the tour matches where, it is what it is. There was no interest from fan bases. The MLS itself, the issue is having players like Wayne Rooney, who are great, good players. Wayne Rooney is a good player. I wouldn't say he's a great player, he's a good player. But when he's over the hill, he's past his best, he's lost more than a yard of pace. He's not going to be as effective as if he went when he was 25. Not going to lie. The overseas players that go to the MLS are well past their best years. And there is issues within the structures of the MLS and the US Federation. There's a reason why they didn't qualify for the World Cup. There's deep-rooted issues, structural issues within football in the US, or soccer as they call it. And we shall see what happens. These are provisional plans, but there is a provisional agreement in place that is a 15-year deal. Whether at some point La Liga regret their decision and there's a fan backlash, which I'm expecting from some La Liga fans, there will be a backlash. But we shall see. The Ronaldo, I think he's already gone to Juventus. He's already scored on debut. He scored 2 goals in his first competitive match. He went for £105 million. There were fan protests and Fiat workers threatened to go on strike over his transfer because of the amount of money paid. And to be honest, he again is past his best. But there are issues within European football right now that are bigger than one player or an agreement, a provisional agreement to play games overseas out of country. So we have to see what happens with the La Liga agreement and what teams actually play the regular season games. If it's all teams, because I don't think American fans are going to want to watch Villarreal play Getafe regular game. I think about 5 blokes and a dog will turn up for that. It's a cash cow. It's aimed at the Hispanic market in the US because that's where a lot of the United States players their background. but the Hispanic market is already majorly into baseball. I cannot see it being successful long term, but it's a cash cow. The amount of American money in the European leagues, especially the UK, is there for all to see. Several clubs are owned by Americans. Whether they're well run is another thing, but several clubs are owned by Americans. There are links in place. But it's funny that all this is happening, but the proposed sale of Wembley has gone very, very quiet. It's been over 8 weeks. It's gone very, very quiet, the proposed sale of Wembley. I think the FA would rather we didn't hear about what's going on there. I wouldn't be surprised if quietly it's hit the skids. But that is an issue that football has. I mean, if you look at other sports, rugby union is taking games to the US, and that's hit and miss. Some games are sold out, other games fall completely flat, and the stadium is half empty. Rugby league has now got the Toronto Wolfpack, but that's in Canada, and the Toronto fan base is buying in. It's a sportsman city, and you look at how the Wolfpack are doing. They're doing very well in the Rugby League Championship, which is a European-based league. But this is a weird thing. Because it's a European-based league, there's promotion and relegation, which is an alien concept to the North American sports market that sees from a franchise system. So it's a completely alien concept to them. They're used to the franchise league. There is no promotion and relegation. You can finish bottom and get the top draft pick. And I don't always agree with the way the North American system works. I understand why they have it, but I don't always agree with it. But you look at the report that came out saying about how Premier League finances, and if half the clubs in the league 2 seasons ago made a profit before they even sold a ticket, that says to me ticket prices are too high. The transfer market is overinflated, utterly. And I think that the subscription TV deal is wrong because we, the fans of sport, are the customers. We are. The fact you are now paying £140 for a Manchester United replica shirt when the people making that shirt make less than $1 a day is sickening. And hence why the World Cup reignited my love for football. But at the same time, you've got to hear about the reports of the fact that the British fan base is being ripped off majorly when it comes to paying for football. And the fact that average clubs, so your mid-table, your Bournemouths, can make a massive profit before even selling a ticket. Yet Bournemouth want to have a bigger stadium, but they make money anyway before they even sell a ticket to get you in the ground. They're making a massive profit, pre-tax, even post-tax profit. Something's not right there. Something's not right when the average ticket price in the Premier League is about 60 to 70 quid. They could let us in for about a fiver to a tenner each and still make a profit. That just shows how greedy the sport has become. And the Premier League was meant to make clubs wealthy, but also keep costs down for fans. The exact opposite has happened. The amount of clubs in debt has skyrocketed, and the price we have to pay for the replica shirts, or the merchandise, food and drink at the stadiums, and our tickets have gone up way above wage inflation. It's disgusting. So football has been milking the fan base for 25 years. I do think there's going to reach a breaking point where fans say, 2 fingers to this, we're not paying for your TV subscriptions anymore. We're not paying for Amazon Prime to cover this crap. We're not paying for BT Sport, and we're not paying for our merchandise and our tickets, and we walk away. I think we're now reaching the breaking point. The sad thing is, too many people are far too loyal to their clubs. The best way to change a system is to change it by protest from within, not from arguing on Twitter. Actually take action and refuse to go to games, because empty stadiums look really, really shit for live TV, which is where most of the money's coming from. So you've got an empty stadium, no fans turning up, because Man City, their stadium is half empty half the time, but they make sure the TV camera's at the right angles so you see enough people. Eventually, I mean, they play fake crowd noises to make it seem like there's more atmosphere than there actually is at some stadiums. Yeah, that's the joy of a PA system. At some point, the system has to change. The sport has to change. It's gone to the point now where they're milking us too much, and fans are turning off. And then you look at the FA Cup last season, the amount of empty seats at games was quite shocking. And clubs were trying to give incentives to basically give tickets away, and fans just weren't bothering to turn up. Yes, the weather may have had an effect because we had a very cold winter last year, or this winter just gone. But when you're trying to give tickets away for a tenner or less, and fans are like, we're not bothering to turn up, that says something about the state of the game. Now, the fact that England played so well at the World Cup and are now ranked 6th in the world is a positive sign. Although I take world rankings with a pinch of salt because they are overinflated and distorted by where you play and what federation you play under. But the issues within football and within top level sport itself are there. And I've just had a phone call, and I'm going to have to message my mate back saying I am busy now. It is what it is. I do think that we, as in sports fans, are taking a lot for granted. And at the lower level of the pyramid, clubs are spending more than they're earning to try and get to a higher league. And you've got to look at the debts in the Championship and League One and League Two, for that matter, to see clubs really against the wall, fighting off administration and liquidation and winding up orders from the HM Review and Customs, and trying to keep creditors happy. Because the big money's in the Premier League. When you get in the Premier League, you can make a profit without even playing a game because the TV rights have been sold. You can afford to get relegated for at least one season, get parachute payments. So you can afford to screw up one season in the Premier League and then bounce back. That's how the yo-yo club works, like West Brom used to be. Oh, God, I can see it within the next 5 years. I can see them really milking it now. Because the amount of times the price of football has come up in Livestream with questions going, how much is it going to cost? How much does it cost? And I compare it to my local ice hockey team, and I compare it to the Elite League Ice Hockey, for example, where it's 25 quid a ticket maximum end for the Elite League Ice Hockey, and it's about an average of 10 to 12 quid for an ice hockey ticket for the National League, compared to 70, 80 quid for a Premier League game in football. That tells you all you need to know. And ice hockey in this country has got its first proper TV deal in a few years. It's been off the TV for a while. It's been basing on pay-per-view live streams or YouTube streaming to try and get any interest on the media. Has just got a TV deal on Free Sports, and it's been off for 6 years in the UK. Struggling to make ends meet. Cheap and affordable. TV deal for football. All the clubs can let us in for free or for very little. Equivalent price, 10 to 20 quid. They choose to rack up the prices to their extortionate levels. The thing is, most fans talk the talk, they don't walk the walk. And the best way to affect change is to walk with your feet and your wallets and go, sod off, I'm not paying you any more money, you're not making a profit out of me, and don't go. Don't buy a subscription TV package. Don't, go to games. Don't buy the replica shirt, replica scarf, whatever it may be, and walk away. It's what I've done. I will not give the Venkies a penny of my money. New Blackburn shirt, Blackburn scarf, beanie, even going to away games at, let's say, Reading or Brentford. I refuse to pay those Cowboys, because they have not a clue what they're doing, but they're milking the cash cow, because they made a lot of money out of us, any more money. I refuse. So I voted with my feet and my wallet, and attendance is up at Ewood Park, average about 15,000. That stadium can seat 37. The season before the Venkies took over, we were packing it out, and we were an average side. That says something. The fact that they're going to take games to the US, you've got to think the travel costs. They're going to deliberately raise ticket prices to cover the travel costs, even though the TV deal could cover it for a billion years. And you could think, is it right? Is it justified? Probably not. I think they are just milking the cash cow. They really are. What's the point of pre-season tours then to all these countries if you're going to put competitive games there and make sure that season ticket holders or half-season ticket holders or whatever it may be, or regular fans, who are on a waiting list for a season ticket. Some clubs it's like nearly 10, 15 years. Chelsea and Tottenham, for example, is a lengthy waiting list to get a season ticket. They don't get to see their game play at least one or possibly more games, either at home or on the road. The away fans are treated abysmally in this country. The Football League, the FA and the Premier League are not helping clubs that are struggling financially, but they're punishing them, which is not the way to go about it. They are not capping prices. There's no price cap on tickets. There is no salary cap on wages. That is tied to inflation or to success. There's none of that. And there's no transfer cap, so you can spend as much as you want. You can. That's how these overinflated transfers take place. That's why so many club records have been broken year on year, and that's why Neymar got sold for silly money, and that's why Ronaldo got bought for silly money, and you could say Van Dijk and Alisson, the new Liverpool goalkeeper, and then Chelsea's new goalkeeper from Bilbao. Silly money paid for players who are actually, in my eyes, nowhere near as good as players 20, 30 years ago. Not even close. Not even close in talent level or I would say commitment level. They're paid too much. They roll around like they've been shot. Neymar has really basically given football a really bad image by his pathetic play acting. Pathetic. This is why I'm going off football. And people ask me why football's so low down in my top 5 favourite sports. Because of these above reasons. It is because that the histrionics, the play acting, the feigning of injury. This is why I like ice hockey. This is why I'm wearing my ice hockey hat and my ice hockey jerseys. No, this is why I like watching sports where the players actually play hurt and you know they're hurting, but they're playing on with like 2 broken ribs, a fractured eye socket, a split lip, concussion. Whether they should or not is another thing, and we've argued about player welfare, but they play hurt. Football, they pretend to be hurt. And it's a shambles. And their wages they're paid and the agents' fees and things like that are really damaging the sport long term. Some of the owners don't give a toss about the fans. Look at Blackpool, the Oyston family, they're scum of the earth. They've got convictions for fraud, child sex offences, rape, you name it, the Oystons have it. Yet they're allowed to run a football club. It is an absolute shambles, the sport. I think it's a very dangerous precedent to take a National League competition and to play it abroad or play games abroad. The Premier League tried to come up with this 39th game and the fans told them where to go. I can see with the league now agreeing this deal, they're going to try it again. They don't give a toss about us, the common working man. It's a working class sport that's now for rich boys to eat their prawn sandwiches and their prawn cocktails. That's what it is. That's what it's become. I think it's gone far too corporate. I think it's reached a point where it's unaccessible for most people. And you've got to look at, issues within not just football but other sports as well. They really is, literally. Not even that. I mean, how the Venkies got to buy Blackburn back in 2010 is a laugh. It really is. My club has been decimated by the Venkies, absolutely decimated. But I mean, I could list off about 20, 30 clubs. Portsmouth is a prime example of corruption at its finest and getting away with it. I can see rugby league. Look at the Bradford Bulls. They were mismanaged for a decade. They're basically gone. Same with London Broncos. I can see rugby league going the same way. I can see rugby union and cricket going the same way. I really can. They're completely mismanaged. The governing bodies are not fit for purpose. I could compare the ECB with the FA and how many failings it has. And all these failings are overshadowing some really great stories that have come out this summer from various teams, nations, athletes themselves. All these negative headlines that are dominating the front and back pages. You look at Ben Stokes, you look at Danny Cipriano. I know you're a football fan and therefore cricket and rugby are not really sports that you maybe necessarily enjoy or watch that often, but you've got to look at their misdeeds and their legal ramifications that they're under and all that kind of stuff. It's dominating the front and back pages when there are some great sporting stories happening right now, or really interesting sporting stories that may have in long-term consequences for the sports and the club's concerned. But because of two pissheads, and that's what I'm going to call them, pissheads. They're bad role models. It's a bad advert for two sports that are regularly seen by some as elitist. And Cipriani, I mean, if you watch my video earlier tonight, he only got fined £2,000 for assaulting a police officer and assaulting another member of the public because he pled guilty in a magistrate's court. Yeah, this is the thing. This is what I mean. You know, but you don't get to hear about that because he played for a non-league club or a lower league club at the time, or whatever it may be with Hereford. You don't hear about it. But here's the thing: if let's say Raheem Sterling was the one doing what Danny Cipriani did yesterday morning, early hours, people would be screaming blue murder. I do think though that Ian Wright's comment saying that the criticism against him is racist is wrong. Most of us who are YouTubers or on social media were saying put Rashford in, and Rashford is full Afro-Caribbean. Raheem Sterling is mixed race. So to say that is racist is complete and utter bollocks by Ian Wright. But now the Kick It Out campaign under Lord Ousley is getting its oar in because that's worked. Kick It Out's worked so well with all the issues of racism and homophobia within football, sexism, so well. I can't stand it when people play the race card. I can't stand it when people play the sexism card or the homophobia card when it's not justified. Because when there actually is a racist incident or a homophobic or a sexist incident, that incident doesn't get that person or those people involved don't get the support they need. Because when people make cheap comments like that, Raheem Sterling for England is crap. For Man City, he's decent because he's playing with possibly better players or a different system. Yes, Gareth Southgate has kept faith with him. I give full plaudits to Gareth Southgate for trying to work with the player. I really, really do. But to throw out the race card pisses me off. It does. Raheem Sterling, yeah, he does get a lot of negative press, rightly or wrongly. It's the press. They're going to go after the big fish. At the moment, he's the guy that people want to hear about because people keep buying this crap or reading this crap on the internet or in papers or in magazines. So I say again, if you want to change something, it's a supply and demand thing. You don't want to read about it, don't buy the crap because the more publications they sell, the more clicks they get on a website because of some story about Raheem Sterling or Lewis Hamilton, whoever it may be, of a mixed race heritage, and they pull the race card, which just infuriates me. The more they're going to print this crap. If people aren't reading it, they're not going to print it. They're going to go to something else that may interest people. Now, the fact that Cipriani and Ben Stokes are covering the headlines at the moment, it's taken some heat off Raheem Sterling, but the fact that Ian Wright has put further heat on Raheem Sterling by being an idiot, because Ian Wright is an idiot, let's be honest, passionate football fan, crap journalist, that's what he is, it hasn't helped the situation. It's actually made it worse. Raheem Sterling played very well at the weekend. So obviously his run in the England side has given him some confidence in himself. But we shall see. Habib Connor, I honestly could not tell you who's going to win that. Mixed martial arts, boxing, things like that aren't really something that I cover much. I understand that you've asked the question, but because of what I've been discussing tonight with some of these negative headlines for the wrong reasons, things like this. So a martial arts fight or a boxing match or whatever it may be, and a big event where there could be a new champion in a weight division or a new star rising are being overshadowed by moronic idiots in sport who bring certain sports a bad reputation. Honestly, I could not really tell you on that one. I don't know enough about the, what you're talking about. My apologies. If you were saying, like, are we talking about Conor McGregor? I'm assuming we're talking about Conor McGregor. Please tell me we are, otherwise there could be. Oh, Conor McGregor. I do think he's an idiot. I do think he's an idiot. I'm not disagreeing. Oh, now I know. Now, Habib Conor. Right. When it comes to that, because of his antics in New York earlier in the year, He's also pled a non-contest charge. He's paying a fine. He's pled, he's had his arraignment. He's pled no contest. He's got off with the fine. So with Conor McGregor, yeah, he's paid a fine and some court costs in America. Very, very similar to Danny Cipriani. So if you watch my previous video on Danny Cipriani and his antics, which are very, very similar, to be honest, and Ben Stokes, you look at all these athletes and high profile, they're well paid sportsmen. These aren't sportsmen who are just squad players. These are well known individuals in their sporting fields. I have no respect for any of them. They're exceptionally talented. They are exceptionally talented, for example, at what they do. But they're abhorrent, disgusting individuals. They really are. I don't think that fight now happens. I think that the amount of chaos at that UFC event has damaged the brand really, really, really badly. I'm not going to lie. I think Conor McGregor himself may never get a booking in either MMA, UFC, Bellator, whatever promotion it may be, because they do feed off it. But at the same time, I think he's burnt a lot of bridges there. But he's also, as I will say this, I've said this before, he is the richest loser in history. That Conor McGregor Floyd Mayweather Jr. fight was the biggest farce I've ever seen in a ring. And I've got a friend who's a boxing coach. He has his own boxing gym. He's got a professional fighter and 9 amateur fighters under his belt, and he wants to get all his 9 amateurs into the professional ranks. Even he says it's the biggest farce he has ever seen in a boxing ring, and he trains fighters for a living. That's his job. And he's trying to sign me up for his gym so I can get some training in, because I've got a shoulder injury, just fitness, and that's what I might do. But if we go to the Ben Stokes, and this is very, very interesting, because it's not just Conor McGregor or Ben Stokes. I do think the verdict on Ben Stokes he was under the wrong charge. If he had been charged for assault, like Danny Cipriani, he would have got a guilty verdict, because it was a fray, which is a very hard charge to prove in a court of law. It's one of the most pointless things now left on the statute book. I think he got lucky with what he was charged with. Had he been charged with GBH, ABH, or common assault, I think he's fucked, quite honestly. But Ben Stokes, he's had a litany of offences and poor behaviours, and he's mocked the disabled. I know it's Jordan's son, Katie Price's son Harvey, that he mocked, but he did basically mock a disabled kid. For that, you can't forgive. The CPS themselves, the Crown Prosecution Service, did bungle the case, because they tried to bring assault charges days before the trial was due to start and threw it. They tried to bring the more serious charges too late. It took 11 months to get to this point, when it was quite easy. It could have been done and over within a month. Cipriani's case shows you can do it in 24 hours. He will play for England again, which is a complete farce, because, to be honest, he's one of the worst role models you could possibly have in a sport that has an issue with a drink culture and has had previous instances with players drinking and fighting and all sorts. Same with rugby union. They're seen as elitist sports when they're actually not as elitist as you think. But because so many of the players have gone to private school in both rugby union and cricket, it's seen as elitist when actually it really isn't. And because these two, Cipriani and Stokes, are two of the best paid, in their field in this country, and two of the best well known, it doesn't look good. It's a bad advert. But Cipriani is a completely different kettle of fish, because he's been doing this pretty much constantly. I do think the verdict was possibly wrong, but because of the charge of a fray, which is different to ABH, GBH, or common assault, it's harder to prove in a court of law. It's an offence that I think they may eventually, take off the statute book. It may go and be replaced with something else, and the wording of the offence may change. But he's a lucky boy. But the ECB are yet to internally discipline him, but I can see that being a whitewash. I can see him getting a suspension, basically. He's got to behave for so many months, otherwise he'll get suspended for X amount of time. Because the ECB is a shocking organisation that is destroying the sport of cricket, or the game of cricket, depending how you look at it, and mismanaging it chronically for the better part of 13 years. They made a lot of money, and they're killing the sport whilst lining their executives' pockets. So there we go. That's my view on that one. But I think, going back to Conor McGregor, I do think the Khabib-Conor McGregor fight doesn't take place. I think with the amount of negative press that got put round the UFC, banner, the fact that Bellator are taking legal action against him anyway for various offences that he's done in Bellator arenas, and matches, I think it's going to be very hard to book him to a big promotion because he's just seen as too much of a risk. Also, Conor McGregor is just a massive bellend. Always has been, always will be. Yes, I am. I just haven't done any videos for a while. I've been very, very busy at work, so getting the time to do the amount of research needed for the other channel is difficult. But I do have a film review to do for it, as promised. I bought this on DVD. It's got all the deleted scenes and added features. I did see this in the cinema. I did a review on the main on this channel, but because it's got all the deleted scenes and all that kind of crap, I can actually watch the full director's cut on this, and I can do as it's the second time I'm seeing the film, I might have a different review for it. But the amount of time taken to do a video on the other channel, the amount of research that has to go in, it sometimes takes 2-3 hours to research a 15-minute video, and I don't have that kind of time Monday to Friday. Now, if this was Saturday, yeah, I could, do the research necessary and put the amount of time in to research and look at the materials and read the articles that I need to read, or the books, or the websites, to get the information I need to do a video. It is still there. We will be doing some videos soon, but they won't be as frequent, as on this channel. It may be once a week. It may be once a night. It may be once every few days. But we will get there. We will get there. It's on the back burner. What was your opinions on the future intersex match, Demetrius Johnson? I'm assuming that's wrestling, right? Or is that another mixed martial arts thing? Oh God. Right. Honestly, I think I'm not a big UFC fan. I will be honest with that. I'm not a big UFC fan. I'm not saying that I'm against mixed martial arts or any kind of martial art itself. I think it's a dangerous precedent to set. Partly because the male body is got more muscle and more power to weight ratio. So when you put a punch in as a bloke, you're going to get more Newton force behind it. Women's bodies are slightly physically different, and I'm not trying to be, say that they're weaker. They're not. But because of the way the female body is built, there is less power to weight ratio. So unless she is completely roided to her eyeballs, I think it's a very dangerous road to go down. I know in some sports you can have like mixed doubles, be it in mixed pairs like golf, tennis. You can do things like that, badminton. When it comes to the martial art blood sports like UFC, it doesn't matter that she's undefeated in her field. A male fighter, regardless of their win-loss record, can do a hell of a lot more damage, in theory, to a female fighter. However, I will say this: she may be better physically and better technically. I have seen women beat the shit out of men. I'm not going to lie, but to do it in a competitive sport, which is a very dangerous sport, I would have concerns about. And it's a dangerous precedent going forward for violence against women. There's a big campaign in politics against violence against women, and a big campaign about domestic violence that goes on regularly. There's regular incidents of domestic violence. It doesn't matter if it's women or male as well. That does happen, and that, I think, sets a very dangerous, murky ground that we're going down on the social side. But there's always going to be that one-off, and TV networks like freak shows like that. I will say it's a freak show. I wouldn't agree with it personally myself. I don't think it's in my sporting mindset. I do understand that they would that there are plans for some of these things. They've mentioned it in boxing as well. They've mentioned it and they've done it in. I know wrestling is sports entertainment. They have done wrestling storylines with men versus women matches. Again, I don't really agree with it. I do think that it does go down a slippery slope. It really does. And I would have some concerns long term if that was to become a regular thing in an actual sport. Professional wrestling is sports entertainment, and you can debate that as much as you want. But I'm quite concerned if that was to be a thing. But UFC already has an image problem after the Conor McGregor incident. I don't think that's probably the best PR move they could do. But I think it's more for the shock than PR. What about match fixing in cricket? I have discussed this before. It's an issue. It's a big problem. I think it doesn't get spoken about enough. I did my favourite cricketing 11, and there was a player that I had to leave out. He would have made the list for the simple fact he was that X factor unpredictability. And that was Sreesanth, Indian cricketer. I had to leave him out of my favourite 11. Had he not done what he did, he would have got into my all-time 11. Same with Hansi Cronje. Had he not been involved in match fixing, he would have also got into my all-time cricketing 11. Sadly, they both decided to, for various reasons, either give information to match fixers or fix games and place illegal bets. And they got caught for it. There are other players as well who've done it. There is a big issue. And the scary thing is, it's not just cricket, it's multiple sports. There's only one country in the world that has a dedicated police unit to deal with organised crime and fixing in sports, or organised crime in sport, and that is Australia. Quite shocking, really. The nation that was set up as a convict colony originally is now the leading light in combating corruption in sport is Australia. I think match fixing cricket is a very serious issue. I don't think the ICC and the various governing bodies at Test level are doing enough to combat it. And I don't think that enough's been done. See, this is the thing. No 3 players have actually been charged. The Al Jazeera documentary, it's Al Jazeera, so they're based in Qatar, and the UAE, which is a neighbouring country, is hosting Pakistani test matches at the moment and hosts cricket. And it's more to do, I think, with regional politics. There have been rumours of several of the current England players possibly being involved in spot or match fixing. And they're two different things. Spot fixing is bowling a deliberate no ball once and over, or bowling a wide, or deliberately, and sometimes the batsman has to be involved, getting yourself run out on 59. Match fixing is when the whole game is open to debate whether it's a clean match or a fixed match. However, they didn't get named. I think it's a murky grey area. The players the Pakistani players who got done for match fixing in 2010, Sreesanth, Hansi Cronje. There are a few others floating around who've been done for match fixing or accused of match fixing. They're the examples that I will use. Match fixing, I'm just going to turn a light on. I'll be 1 second. That's better. Now we can have a bit more light. But no, the match fixing issue within cricket has been around for quite some time. It's nothing new. It's mostly, I would say, in the last 20, 30 years, it's become serious. If you go back to the early 80s, it's not really an issue. Now it is, because the amount of TV money, the amount of sponsorship, the more professional the game has got, the higher wages for players, the greed factor has taken over, and the fact that some countries legal betting is not legal, it's gambling is not legal, and so therefore criminals in the underworld are the ones who control the gambling markets. That happens a lot in India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Singapore, places in South and Southeast Asia have an issue with the fact that because betting is illegal or gambling is illegal or very strictly controlled that and limited, is that the organised crime syndicates can control vast swathes of money, and it's deeply concerning. We could discuss match fixing in a video on itself, on its own, and we could look at all the various match fixing scandals in sport. And unfortunately, there's a lot. And football is one of the worst sports affected. Football and cricket is. Yeah, there was a few New Zealand cricketers. That it's a difficult one. It's a very grey area. The England cricketer of past years, Alex Stewart, who's now a coach at Surrey, has said under interview on the record, while he was still playing for both England and Surrey, he was approached by a man with a briefcase full of cash. After this guy had been talking to him at several matches, he would wait and said, "I'm a businessman. I have a business opportunity for you." And obviously, most professional sportsmen are not paid great sums of money, so they do want a career after sport. And he was like, "Okay." It could have been a property deal. It could have been a used car showroom. It could have been anything. Turned out this guy had a massive briefcase full of cash. Said, "You take this money to throw a game." Um, it's concerning. We have had players, I think, for every test nation accused and some found guilty. It's not just cricket. It's not cricket. There are other sports as well. Cricket is well known for match fixing because of the Pakistan England Test series in 2010 and because of Hansi Cronje back in the late 90s, early 2000s. But other sports, football is an easy one. Yeah, the Pathan brothers. Yes, I have heard that their careers have somewhat disappeared off the face of the earth. Um, but he was brave to report something. But the IPL, several of the franchises, some of the owners have been linked to some very, very dodgy dealings. So it is concerning that a player can have his career damaged because he's trying to do the right thing and say, "This is wrong. I refuse to be bought." Um, but it is an issue that is not going away. It's deeply concerning. I've seen documentaries on match fixing, not just in cricket, but in many sports. I have read articles. I have read books. Um, it's it's not going to go away. Um, it it makes criminals a lot of money. Um, I wouldn't say it's the most corrupt sport. I think FIFA and football might have a hold my beer moment on that, but there is definitely severe corruption within cricket. Yeah, there is no doubt. I wouldn't say it's as prevalent as some in the press would have us believe, because it does sell papers, it does sell clicks on websites, it does get viewers on TV channels to say this is happening. There is an issue there. I don't think it is as prevalent as it's made out, but you hear it on the grapevine. Um, and there are a few matches I've watched. There are some matches I've watched, mostly involving Pakistan, ironically enough. Pakistan, I think, is the worst for fixing. Where I say something is off here. That run out was far. It's like you look at the run out that involved Virat Kohli in the second test. I don't know why they're running that run. It makes no sense. The conditions were very, very difficult to play in, so it's very hard to fix a match when conditions are that changeable. But that run out, that looks like a spot fix to me. 10 years ago, I wouldn't have thought anything about it. I just thought it was some calamities running, some poor communication between two of their key batsmen, who are two of the best batsmen India have at the moment. So that run out 10 years ago, I'd have seen it as just a poor bit of communication, the rush of blood to the head. Now, knowing what I do know and what I've seen, I would question possibly. But I think, it's difficult to say every match is fixed or it's completely widespread. I have heard a lot about subcontinental cricket, and there being issues. But cheats are going to be in every sport. They're always a minority, but when it comes out that this cheating is taking place or this corruption is taking place, most people aren't actually surprised. I think the amount of money in sport now, especially in some of the big sports that have World Cups, so cricket, rugby league, rugby union, football, um, there is that nagging issue there, that nagging realization that that's not quite right, or this one's a bit of a dodgy result, or that's a dodgy moment in the game, or that decision by that official makes no sense. I think, again, yeah, Pandya, I think he hasn't played well in the first two tests, and I think it's because of the weather conditions we've had here in England. I think had this test series been played a month and a half earlier, those first two tests have different results. I think the weather conditions, because India have been playing the one-day matches and the T20s on tour, they've been playing in a heat wave, and suddenly, the last week and a half, 2 weeks, the weather has changed, and got very changeable conditions. Temperatures are about 10 to 15 degrees less than what they were a month ago, 3 weeks ago. Um, and it is what it is. I think players like Pandya, it's like Raheem Sterling in English football. The press need to sell papers, magazines, news articles. They need to get clicks on websites. They need to have viewership figures for videos like this. This is what they do. And I will say this: 70 to 80% of what you read online or in the newspapers is lies. It's false. I studied media at college. I studied media as a course of higher education here in the UK, and 70 to 80% of what is published is complete and utter shite. It's lies. The 20% that is true is courts, when there's a legal case and they have to report what is happening in a court of law, and sports results. You cannot lie about, let's say, a 3-2 result to Liverpool over 18, or Manchester United, Man City, the final score. You cannot make that up. That is set in stone. That's what happened. Whether the game is fixed or not is another thing, but the result is what is there. The goal scorers is what is there. So it's the same with the test match. So when Kohli got his century in the first test, he got 140 odd runs. It's in the scorebook. It's officially kept. We watch with our eyes. We know. You can't make that up. But the other stuff, the conjecture, the supposed he's got to be a match fixer. No, he's a decent batsman. He's a decent player. He's a key player at that role that he plays. I do think it's a shame that someone where they've got no 100% proof is being accused of these things. I think, but I think I think he is either being poorly advised by the press office of the Indian national side. I think the press officer is not advising him very well. I think you want your captain, your vice captain, the ones, and your coach, the ones giving the press conference. Protect the other players, or have a designated player who does all the press conferences alongside the captain and coach, to get all the questions. I think that's the best way around it. I think he, but some players are very unaffected by you know what is written about them, and some take spirit in what's written about them and go, right, okay, they're writing this crap about me. I'm going to prove them wrong. I do think after the second test, India were a shambles. I'm not going to lie. I'm very surprised by. Okay, the weather has changed. The conditions are different to what they were 3 weeks ago. However, I will say this: I am very surprised by the way India have really struggled to adapt to the overcast, damp, changeable conditions. Very, very surprised. Um, but we don't know what's going to happen in the third test. We don't know if the whole Ben Stokes saga is going to affect England. We don't know, past this weekend, how much the weather is going to change and how changeable those conditions are going to be. And we don't know what lineups, if any players are going to be dropped or players brought in, or if anyone's going to get injured in training. Some could get injured in training tomorrow morning, pull a hamstring, tweak a calf muscle, hurt their shoulder, break a thumb. Let's say in batting practice. But the third test is crucial. If India lose that, then I think there has to be something looking. India will have to review themselves. Virat Kohli is a very, very good player, but his personality, I think's not always helped him. I think because he's a very abrasive, fiery personality when he doesn't need to be at times. I think he needs to slightly calm. He's a very excitable character. Yes, he's a very, very good captain. Yes, he's an exceptional batsman, and the IPL has helped with his strike rate because he's made him a more aggressive batsman. Um, but there are concerns for me that because of his attitude's the wrong word. Because of his personality and the way he is as a player, he may not be the best captain. Let's say in the sense that as a calming influence, as a winner, yes, he's got that drive to win, but he does push a line where at the moment cricket needs to have a good image at the moment, and it doesn't. It has a bad image at the moment because of the ball tampering by Australia, the Ben Stokes incident, the Sri Lankan alleged ball tampering, the accusations of match fixing constantly, um, and issues within various countries' domestic games, and issues with uh, TV rights. Is the sport seen as accessible to people? Um, and culturally and socially in different countries, there are different issues within the sport. It is very interesting you're asking a lot of cricket questions because I've done a few more cricket videos the last few days. And this third test is make or break for India on this tour. If they lose it, they lose the series. They have to win this test match, or at very worst, draw the test match. Um, and I think I wouldn't say Kohli's a match fixer. I think that's a very strong statement. What I would say is his attitude and his personality don't make him necessarily a captain that you can say is a good role model. Some of his antics on the field and his attitude on the field shows the wrong side of cricket, which at the moment the sport doesn't need. It needs to be seen as more respectful and opening to people. I think mocking opposition players is not in the sports psyche. It's not cricket, if you know what I mean. It's not what the sport should be. I think it's very interesting that you're an Indian and you're talking about Dhoni, Jadeja, and Raina. Interesting they're not in this side. Very interesting that they're not in this current Test side. And you're saying that they look like match fixers. It shows how some fans have become very, very cynical in a sport that should be a joy to play and watch and participate in. Um, and it's a concern that it's not just a cricket problem. I think it's an issue for all sport. a lot of fans and those who've been watching their chosen sport for many years, a lot of them are becoming very cynical and a bit. I don't believe that athlete, that sprinter, is not doping. I don't believe that player is trying his best. I think that player's a cheat. I think this player's this or that, or this team is corrupt, or this official is not. More and more fans are, as time goes on, they're becoming more cynical about the sports that they used to love. And sport does have a problem. The more money each year that goes into sport, into sponsorship deals and TV deals, the more these allegations against players or teams or individuals seems to be a thing. And the more cynical fans become, and the more, well, the less trusting fans are of the sport or the club or the governing body of that sport than they were a year before. And it's really sad, because sport should be an equaliser and a social mobiliser and a great social get together. It should be a positive for a community, or a positive for a country, or a positive for a local area, or whatever it may be. It should have more positives than negatives. And at the moment, some sports or some individuals, there seems to be a lot of negativity and a lot of concern about, integrity of an individual, a league, a player, uh, a governing body, a national side. There are issues that I'll call it this: the sports culture. Cricket's culture needs to be looked at. There's issues with some countries with alcohol and drinking too much, and there are issues with other countries and alleged match fixing and corruption. And then there's issues within: is the sport accessible enough for young people? Is it accessible enough and enticing enough to get the new fans in, to increase revenues and to increase interest? And is it going down the right direction? Well, I love watching the IPL and all forms of T20 because it is just generally wham bang excitement. I have my concerns about the shorter format of the game, and the amount of money that uh, some of these players are making, and then some of the you know it is. I also feel, is Kohli, but is Kohli the right man to lead long term? I do think that I understand cricket is the second sport in India after hockey, field hockey, that is, because I'm an ice hockey fan. Is the sport I love. I do think that a lot of what's written in the press um, puts unnecessary pressure on players and teams and individuals. But MS Dhoni, okay, he won one Test match out of eight. That's not good. That's not good, on two tours outside of India. But in India, when England played India, India came out on top. So it just so happened that the team he was captaining didn't perform in those Test matches, or didn't adapt to the conditions, much like in this series so far, that India are 2-0 down and have to win the third Test. They have to. Um, there's always no captain is 100% loved in cricket. There's always going to be that lobby that says that other guy should have got the captaincy, or one lobby session. Is he the right guy long term? I do think the sports media needs to take a step back and really report properly and truthfully on what is going on, rather than conjecturing, pressurizing, and undermining coaches and captains in because it doesn't help the game. I personally, as out someone who's not an Indian, and therefore I'm not as invested in the Indian side. If you look at my favourite cricketing 11, not a single Indian player makes it in. One Pakistani player makes it into my favourite 11 players of all time. One English player makes it in. There's a lot of it's a very South African influenced side of my favourite 11 players. Very South African influenced. Um, and But if it was my second string 11, there are more Indian players in it. So I'm not against Indian cricket, but I do think that because of the status the sport has in the subcontinent, um, in not just India but Bangladesh, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka, because of the status the sport has and the player base and the fan base that it has, very similar to football here in England. Um, the pressure on the players is more. The expectation on the players is more. And every time there's a struggle or a rough period, they're going to go after them. It's the same here with with football, rugby union, and cricket as well. The unnecessary pressure placed upon players and a team and coaches is unnecessary. I think it is. I think they do go too far. I think the media has some responsibility in how they report and how they write articles, and but at the same time the players also have a responsibility themselves in how they perform, how they play, how they train, and how they and what they do on a field, and off it as well. But it is interesting what you say. You do say there is like the match fixing lobby. There's a big movement, I would say, within the media and the fan base saying that these players are fixing matches or whatever it may be, or they're anti Kohli and Pandya and Sharma or whatever it is. They have this thing because of the IPL and some of the allegations that they've got in there. You know, the traditionalists. There you go. It, I think the issue is there are issues within the sport of cricket, and it needs to reform itself. It needs to look at what guidelines it has in place for players, and also what it can do to combat match fixing, spot fixing, and other forms of corruption within the game. Um, it has a long way to go to satisfy all those changes needed, but it needs to do it. Otherwise, it risks becoming a laughing stock of international sport. MS Dhoni, yeah, he did lose the captaincy because India did hit a rough patch and they weren't playing well outside of India. I think that is a traditional Indian problem, is not playing well outside of the subcontinent. So if they were to play a test series against Bangladesh, Bangladesh are an improving side. It's still a subcontinental wicket. I think it'll be a very close series because both teams are very used to the conditions. Same with if India played Sri Lanka, it'd be a very, very tight test series. If England were to play in India, India would definitely have the upper hand by a long way, and it would be more of a test for England. For some reason, India do struggle when they play in England. Um, we shall see. Pakistan did very well against Ireland in Ireland's first test and in the first test against England. They won 2 out of the 3 tests on their tour, so to speak. Um, it's an open question. You know, there's a lot of issues within the sport. There's some high profile issues out there. It's up now to the ICC and the various cricketing test governing bodies and the associate members as well of those nations that want to become test nations, um, resolve. Um, it, other sports have had to go through these growing pains and then these issues at some point. Cricket is not alone in the issues that it faces. It's one of many sports that have very similar issues to do with what happens to players after they retire. Some of the colourful antics of some players away from the game. So much like a Ben Stokes, when they're on downtime and they get involved in incidents that end up leading to them getting arrested. It's not the only sport to have these issues, but for some reason, the sporting press seem to really make the issues look worse than they actually are. I understand that match fixing is there. I don't think it is as bad as the press make out. The press are saying it is worse than it actually is to sell newspapers or to sell coverage so that people read that article on that website that's full of ads so they can get the ad revenue. That is basically why they are writing these articles or doing these documentaries, is to sensationalize a thing that is serious, but they are making it seem far worse than it actually is. But yes, the issues are there, and yes, I think cricket can do more to combat these issues. I think all the test nations, they need to look at working with the local authorities to say, look, we have concerns that there are issues that involve organised crime, that involve large sums of money, that involve corruption. And they need to have a good working relationship with all the various local authorities to say, look, this is happening. You know, can you monitor events? They need to work better, be more transparent and more open. And I also think that things do need to change. But that's enough for cricket for now. I think I've bored people to death on cricket because of the issues with broadcasting rights. It is harder to access the sport than it was. It's harder to enjoy the sport. And yes, I would say that I would agree that it's now become more of entertainment than an actual sport. It's gone too far with the show rather than the actual sporting event. I do think they've gone a bit too far with making marketing and turning it into a circus. It has gone too far. Don't get me wrong, I love watching T20. I think it's a fabulous format of the game. I think it's great to get young people in, and then you can develop your skills for one days and test matches later on, and first class domestic. I do think that yes, without shadow of doubt, T20 has helped grow the game's fan base amongst young people. It's how you keep them entertained watching one day and test matches. And you see more and more in test matches where players that do play T20 who get into a test side do some crazy shots, some crazy fielding, and some crazy bowling, and it does make for great entertainment. That's the best way for the sport to evolve. It is the best way for the sport to keep growing. Is to combine all three formats of the game and to utilise the strengths of all three to make the product better. You don't need the crazy fireworks and the main eventing kind of stuff where you got all this post and pre-match entertainment. The sport should entertain, and it was doing that for 100+ years, and now the last 10 it's become a circus, and it risks damaging the sport. It does. We're on that crossing point where we could go down a bad path or verge to the good path. We're at a crossroads with the sport, and the sport needs to work out what direction it really wants to go, and how it wants to grow the sport and evolve the sport. We are at that crossroads. Right, any other questions? Because I'm going to end the live stream now. It's been very, very entertaining, and a lot of good questions tonight. A lot of good points have been raised, and I understand there was a few issues early on with the live stream and the connectivity. That is something I cannot control. It's my internet provider, but I don't pay the bill, so there is an issue with my internet provider. I will finish on the Mbappe. I will finish on that. That is the last question. I will finish on that. I think the French team as a whole was actually not that outstanding at the World Cup. There were times where they looked very pedestrian and they looked very average. However, they worked out a way to win, and they worked out a way to keep games tight and keep the opposition at arm's length. If you feel free, you can look at my World Cup reviews. They're under my football soccer playlist. And I do review, I think there's only about 5 or 6 games that I don't review out of the World Cup. There were a few videos I had to take down for various reasons, mostly to do with possible image stuff and other bits and pieces. But on the whole, the French got through because they were very good defensively. There was a few moments where they looked a little bit suspect, but they got through by hard work. And Mbappe himself, He's got a long way to go. I don't think he's reached his full potential yet. I think his transfer value is a bit too high. I think what he's being valued at is a bit much. He's not the finished article. He wasn't crucial to France's success. I think that was a team of sum of its parts rather than all-star players. It was a sum of players put together, and it got through. Whether the French long term can sustain this run and they can win the European Championships in 2 years' time and defend the World Cup in 4 years' time and go on, we shall see. The French national side has been up and down for the last 20 years. It's had some highs and some very bad lows. So we shall see what the French do long term going forward. I wouldn't say this is the best French team. I would say the French team in '98 and 2000 was better. I would say that. I would say the French team of 20 years ago was a better team. But Mbappe can kick on to that next level. He definitely can. I think for him to do so would require him to go to a bigger club in Europe. It really would require him to play in the Bundesliga, La Liga, Serie A, or the Premier League, because I think the French league is the weakest of the 5 main European leagues. But I have discussed football a lot on this live stream. On the early half of it, there were a lot of issues within the game itself that the game and the sport, the governing bodies need to sort out. But the corruption is so endemic in football when it comes to bribery and not match fixing as such, but bribery and dodgy transfer dealings and things going on behind the scenes that will take years to clear up. But Mbappe has a long way to go before he's peaked. He can still get better. I do believe he can get better. There is room for improvement from him. But he has a World Cup winners' medal to his name, and he's still 19, 20 years old. He's got another 15 years ahead of him. He can play at least 2 to 3 more World Cups if he stays fit. That's scary. And he can get better. I would say he would peak in about 8 years' time. He can get better. That's the worrying thing. It's whether the national side can develop him and his club side, wherever he ends up playing, whatever club he's at the time, that manager could keep developing that skill level. And not just that, but his interplay teamwork, because there's a lot he still needs to learn about the game. And there's a lot he can improve on. Bringing other players into play, his movement off the ball. He does do it well, but he can do it better. And linking up, holding up the ball, laying the ball off, running on. There's a lot he can do, but at the moment he's got a good solid base to grow on. But it's very hard to say about a young player what they're going to do next year. He was part of a winning side. He wasn't the reason why they won. He was part of a group of 23 individuals in that squad that went on to lift the trophy. You don't do it as a one-man band. You have to have teammates. And the Argentina game proved that. They beat Argentina, but the thing was, they still conceded 3 goals in doing it. So defensively, the French setup has problems, and Deschamps has been criticised for getting tactics wrong in games where it's not open. If it's an open game, France do very well. If it's a very defensive game, France struggle. They are a bit pedestrian and slow at times, and that is a weakness that can be exploited. But we'll have to see how they do over the next 2 to 4 years. And Mbappe himself, again, we'll have to see. But anyway, I'm going to leave that there. Thank you very much for watching and contributing tonight, everyone. I really appreciate all your questions. If you want to see any of my football videos, I have a playlist dedicated to them. And I did cover a lot of the World Cup. So I've got almost all the World Cup games. There's a few that I didn't cover. But feel free to watch my reviews on the World Cup as well. I find some of them quite actually entertaining. Looking back on them, I have a bit of sarcasm in there and humour because VAR. And thank you very much for saying I should become a sports writer. I mean, I'm not famed for my writing ability. I'm famed for my talking ability, as I would say. But thank you very much for watching and contributing your questions. Very interesting topics you raise. I know you're obviously writing from India, so English is not necessarily your first language. So I understand some of the questions you've asked. It takes me a bit of time to read through, comments when it's not a first language. I understand that, speaking a question is easier than writing a question. But I got your points very well, and that they were very interesting. Anyway, thank you very much for your questions, Shrish. I really appreciate them. And I hope to see you on a live stream soon. Thank you very much, and good night.